Hello again. Alright, so today's lesson is called Factoring Trinomials when a is greater than 1. So notice these are all going to be numbers bigger than 1. If we ever have a negative there, then we'll factor out a negative first, okay? And so let's get started. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and do these the same way we were doing yesterday's lesson on factoring trinomials. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and draw two parentheses, and we're going to break apart the first term there, 5x squared. Now, we know it's going to be x times x to give us the x squared, but what about the 5? There's only one way to make 5 by multiplication. That's 5 times 1. So we're just going to say this is 5x and that's x. It doesn't matter where you put the 5x. You could put it in the first parentheses or in the second one. Just know that we have to have a 5x and an x there so that when we multiply those two, we get 5x squared. Now, for the 6, okay, here's where the mental math comes in, and we're going to do some little work on the side there. We know for 6, there are two ways to make 6. There's 6 times 1 and 2 times 3. Okay? But notice how none of these will give us the negative 17 that we need. And that's because we have to include the 5 that is right here. Okay? So, in order to get the 17x, the negative 17x, we need to make sure that the numbers that we plug in, it's going to be a pair of these two here. We need to make sure that when I multiply the 5 with that number there and the other number with this number here, I need to get negative 17. So let me illustrate here. So say for example, I want to use the 6 and the 1. If I put the 6 here, right, and the 1 here, notice here, let's do this mentally. 6 times 5 is 30. That's a big number. That's way bigger than negative 17. And then 1 times x is 1. So 30 plus 1 is 31. That's not the number I need. And then 30 minus 1 is going to be 29. So neither of those give me the negative 17 that I need. Well, what if I put the 6 here and then the 1 here? Well, then I'll have 5 times 1 is 5, and then 6 times x is 6x. 5 plus 6 is 11, and then 6 minus 5 is 1. So those two numbers are not going to work. It's got to be 2 and a 3. So let's go ahead and try this. Let me just randomly put the 2 and the 3 there. Okay, let's try this. 5 times 2 is 10, so that'll give me 10x. And 3 times x is 3x. If I add these two, I get 13x. I need a negative 17x. Okay? What if I were to make them both negative? Well, let's see here. I'll still get negative 10x and negative 3x. That'll be negative 13x. So this won't work for me. Okay? So these two numbers did not work. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. So I had the 3 and the 2 there. So now I'm going to put 2 and 3. So I just switched places here. Now let's try that. So remember, this didn't work. So let's try this. 5 times negative 3 is going to be negative 15x. And then negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Ah, look at that. That gives me the negative 17x that I need. Okay? And then if I multiply the negative 2 times the negative 3, we already said that that's going to give me a positive 6. So that's my answer. 5x minus 2 times x minus 3. Okay? So let's keep trying all these. Let's look at the next one. So go ahead and start with your parentheses and split up the first term there. So that's going to be just 3x times x. For negative 7, I know I'm going to need a positive and a negative. So it's going to be 7 times 1, and then one of these has to be negative. Okay? So let's just go ahead and make one of these negative and one of these positive. And let's see if we can figure out where it goes. So let me just put the 1 and the 7 like that. Okay? So notice negative 1 times 7. That'll give me the negative 7 here. But let's see if it gives us a 20x that we need. So 7 times 3x is going to be 21x. And then the middle ones here. X times negative 1 is negative 1x. Is 21x minus 1x? 20x? Yes, it is. So that's my answer. Okay? So basically all we're doing is we're factoring the first and the last term and checking the multiplication in between to make sure it adds up to the middle term. Okay? Let's keep going. 3x squared plus 5x minus 12. So begin with your parentheses. And let's factor out the 3 here. So it'll be 3x times x. It's always nice when the number here is prime. There's only one way to multiply it. 3 is 3 times 1. So 3x times x it is. Now negative 12. Again, whenever I have a negative, I know these are going to have to be different signs. So one's going to be positive and one's going to be negative. But remember, we need a 5 here. Okay? So it's a positive 5. So we need to make sure that the number that is larger is a positive. Okay? So let's try this here. So there's a 1 times 12, 2 times 6, and 3 times 4 that make 12. So let's see here. Let's try to use mental math. If I put the 1 here and the 12 here, when I multiply 12 times 3, I get 36. That's going to be way too big. So it's not going to be that way. What if I put the 12 here and the 1 there? That'll be 12 times x is 12, and then 3 will be 3. So 12 minus 3 is 9, still too big. So it's not going to be any of these two. What about the 2 and the 6? If I put the 2 here, let me just go ahead and write it, and the 6 here, 6 times 3 is going to be 18. And 18, well, in this case, it will be negative 18. So if I put 18 and 2, that'll give me 20 if I add, or 16 if I subtract. So let's switch places. So I'll put the 6 here and the 2 there. Let's try that. 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And then 6 times 1, x, is 6. So negative 6 and 6, that's going to give me 0. Okay? So I don't want that. And if I add them, 6x and negative 6x, well, that gives me 0. So it's not going to be these two either. So let me erase. That means it has to be these two together. But does the 3 go here or here? Well, let's try it. Let's put the 3 here and then the 4 here. 3x times 3 is going to give me the 9x. And then the 4 times x is 4x. So if I subtract these, I get 5x. But I got to make sure that the 9 is positive. So right here, if I put the 3x with that, I need to make sure that this is positive. So I'm going to change that to a positive. And the other one to a negative. Okay? Just like I'm doing here, be prepared to erase and rewrite. Okay? Because it's a lot of guessing and checking. So notice here again, 3x times 3 is 9x, and then negative 4 times x is negative 4x. That gives me the 5x that I need. And then when I multiply negative 4 and 3, it gives me the negative 12. These are a lot harder. I'm talking about these problems from today are a lot harder because it has a lot more steps, a lot more mental math. Look at the next one here. We have 14m squared. Now, there are more than one way to make 14. There's 7 times 2 and then 14 times 1. So I'm going to go ahead and use 7 times 2. Okay, so I'm going to do 7m and then 2m. Usually, I like to go with the numbers that are multiplying by numbers that are not 1. So 7 times 2. They may work, they may not. I have to try them out. The nice thing is that this number here is just negative 3. So there's only one way to make 3, and that's 1 times 3. Now remember, one has to be positive, one has to be negative. We'll figure that out later. For now, let's put the 1 here and the 3 there. Okay? I just randomly put them there, and I'm going to check. I need a positive 1m here. So 7 times 3 is 21m there, and then 1 times 2 is 2. That's not going to give me a 1 no matter which way I go. So if I add, I get 23. If I subtract, I get 19. So that's not going to work. So all you got to do now is switch places here. So let's put the 3 here. and the 1 there. And then redo this. So let me erase this. So let's try it now. 7m times 1 is going to be 7m. And then 3 times 2m is 6m. Perfect. If I subtract these, I get the 1m. Okay? So now notice I need my 7m to be positive. So I'm going to put a positive here so that when I multiply 7m times 1, I get 7m. And then this one's going to be a negative. So when I multiply negative 3 times 2m, I get negative 6m. Okay? So that'll give me the m that I need after I combine like terms. And then when I multiply negative 3 times 1, I get the negative 3. Okay? So it's a lot of guessing and checking. Next one. This one's a special case. Just from looking at this, I see that they're all even numbers. Whenever they can all be factored out by a common number, then we got to do that first. So in this case, 12, 4, and 40 are all divisible by 4. Yes, it's divisible by 2, but it's also divisible by 4. So we always want to divide by the largest number possible. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to factor out a 4. Remember, factoring means undistributing. So that's going to leave me with 3x squared minus 1x minus 10. So how did I get these numbers? I simply divided each of these by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. Negative 4 divided by 4 is negative 1. That's an invisible one. And then negative 40 divided by 4 is a negative 10. Okay? So now inside the parentheses I have a trinomial. I'm going to go ahead and factor that. Now remember, the 4 is still outside, but we don't need to worry about it anymore. Now we just need to worry about factoring what's inside the parentheses. So we're doing it just like the problems before. So 3x squared is going to be just 3x times x. Then 10, remember, we have 5 times 2 and 10 times 1. And it has to be negative, so one of these will have to be negative. Well, let's do some mental math. Let me just put the 5 here and the 2 there. And let's see if we get a negative 1 in between. So, multiply these two, multiply those two. See if you get the negative 1 that you need. Well, when I multiply 5 and 3, I get 15. So 15x. And then 2 times x is just 2x. That's not going to give me the negative 1 that I need right here. So, I'm going to switch places. I'm going to put the 5 here and the 2 there. And let's try again. So now here 3x times 2 is 6x, and then 5 times x is 5x. Perfect. If I subtract these, I get my 1x, right? Oops. But I need a negative 1x, so where should I put the negative? On the 6. Okay, so negative 6x plus 5x is going to give me the negative 1x that I need. And so just make sure that when you multiply these two, you get a negative 6x. So I'll make the 2 negative. That way 3x times negative 2 is negative 6x. And then make this one positive. Remember, whenever your last term is a negative, you're going to have one positive, one negative. Okay? Next one. Well, these are big numbers. Okay? It looks like 3 goes into each of these. And I don't have a calculator near me, so let's go ahead and divide here. Notice also it starts with a negative. So whenever the first term is a negative, you want to factor out a negative as well, because you want your first term to be positive. So we're going to factor out a negative 3 here. So let's divide all these by negative 3, and that'll be what we write inside the parentheses. So negative 36 divided by negative 3 is going to be a positive 12n squared. 48 divided by negative 3 is going to be a negative 16n. And then negative 15 divided by negative 3 is going to be a positive 5. Okay? So just like we did in the example above, we want to factor the trinomial. And the negative 3 stays outside. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Okay? So 12. Well, 12 has 1 times 12, 2 times 3, 2 times 6, and 4 times 3. So we have a lot of choices here. We're going to have to try them each, okay? So let's go ahead and How about we do this? Why don't we put the 5 here, 1 times 5. I know that this is going to be a 5, so it's just only one way to make 5, okay? So there's a negative 16 in the middle, so that tells me that the middle term is going to be negative, so I'm going to have to end up with a negative times a negative to give me a positive, okay? So let's see what we should put in the first spot. Let's start with 2 times 6, so 2n and 6n. Let's try that, okay? So let's try multiplying these two like that. And I get 2n times negative 5 is negative 10n. And the negative 1 times 6n is negative 6n. Perfect. On the first try, I got it. So notice here, if I add these two negatives, I get negative 16n. And that's the number I have in the middle. If I would have tried the 4 and the 3 and the 1 and the 12, it would not have worked. Okay? So this one's done. That's my answer right there. Couple more examples and we're done. In fact, why don't you guys try this one? Hit pause and then try it out. Okay, so 11z squared, that's just going to be 11z times z. And then 9, I have, well, it's a negative 9. I have two ways to get it, 3 times 3 or 9 times 1, with one of those being negative. So let's just try the 3. So I'll put a negative 3 here and a positive 3 there. Let's see if that works. So let's multiply the outer and the inners here. So 11 times 3 is 33z. Oh, I already see this is going to be way too big. And then negative 3 times z is negative 3z. Too big. Okay, so I'm going to change that to 9 and 1. Because they're the same number, so switching them is not going to make a difference. So I'm going to put a 9 here and a 1 there. Okay, and you can probably already see that that's not going to be the right one. Why? Well, let's see why. What's 11 times 9? 99z. And then negative 1 times z is negative 1z. That's not going to give me 2. That's going to be 98. So switch the places of the 9 and the 1. That should work. So put the 9 here and the 1 here. Notice here, 11 times 1 is 11. Let me fix this. So that's going to be 11z. Excuse me. And then negative 9 times z is negative 9z. Perfect. 11 minus 9 is 2z. So that's my answer here. Last one. Try it. Hit pause and then try it out. Okay, so let's go ahead and divide here. Sorry, not divide. Let's go ahead and factor here. So 5x squared is going to be 5x times x. And then negative 3, well, that's easy. It's just going to be 1 times 3, but I need one positive, one negative. So I need a 14, sorry. I need a 14. So I'm going to put the 3 here. That way I know when I multiply when I multiply 5x times 3, I get 15x. And I'll put the 1 here. That'll give me the 1x. But remember, I need a positive 14x. So which one should I make negative? That's right, the one that gives me the negative 1x. So make that negative and make this positive, and you're done. Okay, so now let's go to Delta Math and try those out.